Strange. She is here tonight with the League of Women Voters. And your question to Congressman Kagan.
Congressman Kagan, with the debt at 13.2 trillion and the deficit at 1.4 trillion, would you deal with the debt and deficit issues through increasing government revenue or decreasing government spending? Please give some specifics with your answer.
Sure, and thank you for the question, because our national debt is a crisis. It has brought many other nations to their knees. But today, jobs trump debt. If people have a job and they're working, they can stay in their own home, they can pay their own bills, and we can begin to resolve and find the floor in the housing crisis market. Without finding the floor in our housing industry, we won't be able to work our way back into prosperity. So first and foremost, we have to focus on jobs, because today, jobs trump debt. So I have just indicated to you that I co-sponsored legislation to pay as we go, to live within our means. I also agree with the President's idea about freezing the discretionary spending for a period of years until such time as we can begin to see a balanced budget coming forward. So we have to do some belt-tightening in Washington. Everyone agrees that we can't spend our way into prosperity. But at the same time, we have to help people who need help the most. And that's going to be the middle class. So I'm going to be voting to extend the middle class tax cuts and to guarantee that they have an opportunity to stay in their own home. We have to solve our housing crisis simultaneously while we help people to get back employed.
And the follow-up question, I think you've answered part of this, but to stop spending, we must make cuts. Where would you make them? To increase revenues, we must raise taxes. What taxes would you propose?
Well, I've also been working with Secretary Gates. When he gave his speech about his intent to find and eliminate all wasteful spending within the military budget, the Department of Defense, I applauded him. I communicated with him and asked him for a list of specific cuts he was looking to make. And he found $330 billion of projects that would not enhance our national security. Things like our missile shield, things like the F-22 and others. I also encouraged him to continue to invest in our LCS ships and bring them back to our state. So there are ways we can eliminate wasteful spending, particularly in healthcare. Not my view, but it's the view of other experts, that there's nearly $1 trillion of wasteful spending within our healthcare industry. We can provide access to the highest quality care at a lower price by rooting out and eliminating the wasteful spending within it. So yes, I'm in favor of tightening the belt in our federal budget. I'm very much in favor of tightening the Department of Defense and making sure that we find out where all the wasteful spending is in healthcare as well.
Mr. Ribble, the main question. With the debt at 13.2 trillion, the deficit at 1.4 trillion, would you deal with the debt and deficit issues through increasing government revenue or decreasing government spending? And please give us some specifics.
Sure. You have to deal with them both ways. You have to increase revenue, you have to decrease spending. I have to chuckle a little bit at PAYGO. This comes around just about every election cycle. If we had real PAYGO, if we were paying as we go, you couldn't have a $1.3 trillion deficit spending. Otherwise, you're not paying as you go. The pay is going away, it's what's happening. The reality is that instead of raising up taxes, what we ought to be doing is focusing on raising up taxpayers. If we can put 15 million Americans back to work, if we can get 8 million Americans that are underemployed to full employment, you bring the revenue into the treasury. So you keep taxes low to encourage job creation. And I mean, we hear from Congress some ideas about providing small businesses some tax relief, and all that tax relief is needed. And so we can do that by raising up and creating more jobs. That's how you fix it on the revenue side. On the deficit side, you get out of debt at government level, and business level, and personal level, the same way you get in, incrementally over time. And our Congress has incrementally over the last 50 years continued to expand itself and continued to grow government. A reduction for a federal legislator is a reduction in growth. You know, let's cut the rate of spending in half and call it a cut. Well, what we need is some structural cuts, specifically in the budget. And we can start across the board. We can start by reducing duplication of services that are being done by states. There's plenty of places to look.
I really think you've answered the follow-up to we must make cuts to stop spending, and where might we make them? To increase revenues, we must raise taxes. What taxes would you propose?
I don't think in a recession that you raise any taxes. I think that's a huge mistake. It's anti-job, anti-business, anti-American at this point. We need to keep our taxes low. I mean, stop and think about it. If the idea is that, whatever, $700 billion or $1 trillion of stimulus is going to stimulate the economy, if taking money from the government and giving it to somebody is going to stimulate the economy, let's let them keep that money in the first place so that they can stimulate the local economy and their families and their households. And that way, they begin to consume and have confidence in what's going out of their pocket. That's how you do it. You don't have to raise up taxes to increase the flow or velocity of money in our economy.
Congressman Kagan, your final thoughts on this?
Well, we need to make things here in America because manufacturing actually matters. When you make things, you actually have things. And these are the higher wage jobs that we need in the middle class to sustain ourselves. And not just educate ourselves, but also to educate our families. We need to have balanced trade with China. China must bring an end to the manipulation of their currency. I voted to close the tax loopholes that send our jobs to China. I voted to push back on China and force them to stop manipulating their currency. And I pushed back against China to save our paper jobs. So it's not an idea. I've already done it.
Mr. Ribble, your final thoughts?
Yeah, if we really want to get the jobs right here in North Wisconsin, maybe we can start with our timber industry. We're one of the most timber-rich districts in the United States, and yet here we are in Wisconsin importing lumber from Canada, and it goes back to mismanaged forest lands and bad regulation, and we're losing hundreds and hundreds of timber jobs.
Now, Mike Kemmeter, please address your next question to Mr. Reed Ribble.
Mr. Ribble, federal lawmakers created a new health care reform law earlier this year. What positive steps does it take, and what could be improved or changed?
Yeah, the health care bill is a problem for me, and it's a problem for almost every single small business. I was with a company just today in Shawnee, and they told me that the cost of the health care bill to their company alone in 2014 is going to be $2 million. That's the additional cost that they told me today. Now that's $40,000, $50,000 a year jobs right there. If you want to solve some of the healthcare crisis, let's solve the job crisis first. You know, healthy nations typically come from wealthy nations. Let's raise up the economy. Let's improve the economy. Let's stop destroying jobs in this country. We'll get there. There were some good things in the healthcare bill that I did like, but there are lots of things that need to be improved. First of all, we could have addressed tort reform. But it's difficult to do in a Congress that is filled with attorneys, quite frankly. We need to broaden the base of the members of Congress so that we can get a more fair and balanced look at legislation. Why should the American consumer have to pay excessive liability insurance rates so that trial lawyers can get rich? What we need to do is have a provision in there where the loser pays. If a doctor damages somebody, I'm not saying a lawsuit shouldn't happen. What I'm saying is let's get rid of the frivolous lawsuit by putting a loser pay provision. Let's incentivize doctors to do more pro bono work, to serve indigent people by giving them a tax credit when they do work for free. And then let's let associations like the NFIB pool together 1 million of their employees nationwide and buy across state lines in small association pools and plants, not just in the state of Wisconsin, but throughout the U.S., so we can increase the size of the risk pools. Those are things that would have driven costs down. Those are things that would have meant the costs go down and improve the circumstance.
My follow-up question, Mr. Ribble, is what would you like the healthcare policy to be in 2 years when this upcoming term is completed?
Yeah, I think that we need to start over, quite frankly. I think that by going at a very broad approach that they took, we've actually damaged American job creation. Business owners all over the district are telling me, I don't know what this new health care bill is going to cost me, but I know it's going to cost a lot. I'll just give someone overtime rather than creating a new job. What I believe we should have done is we should have taken that person that had a pre-existing condition, that person without insurance, and in a very micro level, work specifically for that 10 or 15% of the population, rather than saying, I'm going to force fit this bill or this program to 85% of the population as well. We could have done it at a more micro level that would cost much less money.
Congressman Kagan? Federal lawmakers created a new healthcare reform law earlier this year. What positive steps does it take, and what could be improved or changed?
Well, thank you, Mike, for the question. Access to high-quality health care for my patients was the reason I got into politics. When I was taking care of Jenny, a single mom with 2 kids, and I wrote her a prescription, and she took the prescriptions to the pharmacy, I told her her kids were going to get better. They'd be back in school, they wouldn't be sick with their asthma. When she came back a month later, the kids were still out of control, still out of school, and still sick. And I came down pretty hard on her. I said, you know, Jenny, it's a funny thing about this medication. It only works if you put it in their mouth. And she put her bag on my counter where I sit with the patient. And she unzipped her purse, took out the same prescriptions, and she said, Dr. Kagan, I went to the pharmacy. I stood at the counter. I could see the medicine, but I couldn't afford to put it in her mouth. What can you do for me now? I said, that's it. I can't fix health care like this. I can't be a mayor, can't be a county executive. I've got to go to Washington and bring some sense to them. And that sense, put patients first. We're beginning to fix what's broken, and we're improving on what we already have. We now have 5 new American freedoms that I'll fight my heart out against anyone to protect. You're free from discrimination against pre-existing conditions. As of 9/23, no longer can any child be discriminated against just because of the way they're born. You're free from cancellation. You've got insurance, you get sick, days gone by, my patients were cut off just because they got ill. No longer can you be canceled when you get sick. And the biggest plus, the #1 cause of bankruptcy in your district has been the cost of health care that drove families broke and out of their home. No longer, because we've eliminated the annual cap and the lifetime cap. No longer will any family have to go broke and lose their home simply because a child has an accident or gets sick. So I think there are a lot of positives that we put into this. There's a lot of Northeast Wisconsin in this law.
Congressman Kagan, the follow-up, what would you like the healthcare policy to be in 2 years when the upcoming term is completed?
Well, I'm working very hard. I put together a one-page bill, 1 sentence. It's Transparency in All Healthcare Pricing Act. It says that any individual business that offers healthcare products or services for sale to the public must at all times openly disclose all of the prices they've taken as payment in full. I'm looking forward to Reed supporting me in this. I have Joe Barton, who's the ranking Republican member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, going to be working with me when I get back to Washington with your help. We need transparency to drive quality up and prices down. Transparency not just in price, but in quality, in outcomes, and in service. Patients want to go shopping. I think the exchange isn't going to be any government exchange. I think it's going to be the internet. I'd like you to be able to take your smartphone, type in the medication you need, and then you've got a map of where you can buy that medication, and you'll know the price of the pill before you swallow it.
Mr. Ribble, final thoughts?
Congressman, in January, I'll be happy to take your transparency bill forward. And, but I will tell you, I agree that we can service the indigent patient, the patient that doesn't have care. We can find ways to do that. But I want the American people to know there's a reckoning coming. That every single time the federal government has created a large entitlement program, they have underestimated and have confused the American people on what the real costs are going to be. And I am hearing from business owners around the district that the cost of this is going to be very high, and they're going to begin to drop insurance.
Congressman Kagan, your final thoughts.